You never expect betrayal to arrive with such calculated precision. A hidden line of credit, forged signatures, and a choreographed plan to drain what we'd built together, all meticulously documented in my binder labeled Truth. My name is Hector Parker, and I'm 33 years old. Each morning I sit at my kitchen table, reviewing statements and building my case with the same careful attention I once gave to our shared dreams. Sandra, my wife of 5 years, left a note claiming she needed to find herself. What she found was her ex-boyfriend's apartment and a scheme to take everything. The quiet dinners, the half-paid mortgage, the trust I thought was unshakable. All of it dissolved in a trail of bank statements and secret credit cards. I didn't throw things or scream. Instead, I documented every receipt, every drawer, every transaction. Because principles matter more than rage. But let me start from the beginning. The morning silence hit different that day. I'd gotten used to the soft sounds of shared space, coffee brewing, shower running, drawers opening and closing. But now every echo bounced off empty walls, making our modest 3-bedroom feel cavernous and strange. I noticed the note before I even reached for the coffee maker. There it was, taped to the refrigerator with the magnetic strip we used for grocery lists. White paper, black ink, 5 words that changed everything. I need to find myself. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I reached for my phone, opened the camera app, and took 3 photos of the note exactly as I found it. Straight-on shot, angle from the left showing the tape, another from the right capturing the time on the microwave display, 7:43 a.m. The same way my father taught me to document every receipt in his bookkeeping practice, I slipped the note into a fresh manila envelope, wrote the date in the corner, added kitchen note found underneath. Sometimes the smallest details matter most. At my desk, I powered up the laptop and pulled up our joint accounts. The familiar rhythm of checking balances and reconciling statements helped steady my breathing. I created a new folder on the desktop, Truth. Simple name, clear purpose. Started making tabs, bank statements, credit cards, mortgage docs, screenshots of recent activity. That's when I saw it. A notification from First Regional, timestamped 6:17 a.m. Your application for a home equity line of credit is being processed. I blinked, read it again. My throat went dry. I never applied for a HELOC. The proposed credit line was substantial, nearly all our available equity. My cursor hovered over the details as I checked and double-checked the application date, the account numbers, the requested amount. The screen's glow felt colder now, harsh against my eyes as I hit print and added the pages to what was becoming more than just a folder. This wasn't just about Monica leaving. This was about exposure, to debt I never agreed to financial decisions I never made. The tightness in my chest had nothing to do with heartbreak and everything to do with self-preservation. Outside, evening crept across the yard, casting long shadows through the living room windows. I'd been at this for hours, watching numbers shift and balances update in real time. Each refresh brought new questions. Each statement revealed another layer of calculated planning. Remember those summer afternoons when we were kids watching storm clouds gather? That electric feeling in the air right before everything breaks loose? That's what it felt like, sitting there with my growing binder of evidence, knowing the next move would determine everything. The numbers kept changing. Small withdrawals, pending authorizations, holds placed and released. Like watching someone test the perimeter of a fence, looking for weak spots. I pulled up the bank's fraud reporting page and let my finger rest on the trackpad. Everything hinged on what I did next. The cursor blinked, waiting for my decision. The doorbell rang just as dusk was settling in. I knew it would be her. Sandra had always timed her emotional moments for maximum effect. Sure enough, when I opened the door, she stood there backlit by the fading sun, eyes glistening with careful tears. "I just came for my suitcase," she said, that brittle smile in place. The same smile she'd used when telling me work dinners ran late these past few months. I stepped aside to let her in, noting how she'd styled her hair the way I once said I loved. Everything calculated, down to the slight tremor in her hands as she set her purse on the kitchen counter. Our kitchen counter, where we'd made Sunday breakfasts and holiday dinners. The memory of pancake batter and coffee steam hit me hard, but I kept my face neutral. "We were already over, Hector," she said softly, those practiced tears catching the light. "You had to have felt it too. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." I let the silence stretch between us, remembered my father's words about patience revealing truth. When I finally spoke, my voice came out steady, controlled. "I need the joint credit card back tonight," I said. "And as of now, you lose access to any account with my name on it. That's non-negotiable." She blinked, and for just a moment, the performance slipped. Her eyes hardened like sea glass, all that calculated vulnerability vanishing into something sharp and cold. Without a word, she dropped a canvas tote bag by the stairs, probably empty, probably just a prop for this scene she'd planned. "Fine," she snapped, fishing the card from her wallet and slapping it on the counter. Then she was gone, the door closing with more force than necessary. I exhaled slowly, feeling the tension drain from my shoulders. That's when I noticed it. An unopened envelope on the counter, half hidden behind the coffee maker. The kind banks send when they're delivering new cards. My hands were steady as I picked it up, steadier still as I slid out a credit card bearing my name. Hector Parker, embossed in raised letters that caught the dying light. I didn't recognize the account number. I pulled up the online banking site, entered the card number, and felt my jaw tighten. There it was, a statement full of charges I'd never made, stretching back 3 months. Restaurants I'd never visited, hotels I'd never booked. A story written in receipts and timestamps, each line item another crack in what I'd thought was true. The printer hummed as I added these new pages to my binder. Each sheet felt heavy with implications, with questions I wasn't ready to answer. Outside, full dark had settled over the neighborhood. The front door's lock clicked with finality in the silence, but it felt less like security now, more like the sound of another barrier between truth and lies. I'd forgotten how quiet midnight could be. The house's familiar creaks felt amplified as I hunched over my laptop, following this new card's digital footprint. Every click carried me deeper into a web I hadn't known existed. The statement portal had a cloud storage link, one of those automatic backup features banks push nowadays. But this wasn't just statements. The folder tree sprawled like ivy, dating back months before she left. My father taught me about audit trails when I was young, showing me how every transaction tells a story if you know how to read it. "Numbers don't lie, son," he'd say, tapping his ledger with a mechanical pencil. People do. The memory of his office, sharp graphite smell, radio humming old country songs, steadied my hands as I clicked through the files. Each folder name was a date, innocuous at first glance, but inside they held screenshots of our accounts, photos of documents I'd signed, copies of our mortgage paperwork, the kind of things you'd only gather if you were planning something. Then I found the text thread. It was buried 3 folders deep, automatically syncing from her phone. Messages between Sandra and a number I recognized, her ex. My throat went dry as I scrolled, watching them coordinate timing, discuss accounts, share links to financial articles about debt liability after separation. "Timer set," one message read. "Funds release Friday, Erev noon." A countdown widget pulsed in the corner of my screen. Hours, minutes, seconds trickling away like water through cupped hands. The fluorescent glare of my desk lamp suddenly felt too harsh, too exposing. I grabbed a neon sticky note, wrote Fry Noon in block letters that looked steadier than I felt, and pressed it onto the cover of my truth binder. The betrayal crystallized in that moment, boiling down from hurt and confusion into something harder, clearer. A steel resolve settled in my chest. This wasn't just about leaving or lies anymore. This was calculated, coordinated, and I had until Friday to move. I pulled a stack of fresh manila folders from my desk drawer, the same kind my father used. The label maker hummed as I marked each one methodically. Bank statements, credit cards, property documents, text evidence. The wall clock's tick grew louder as midnight slipped past, marking time I couldn't waste. My screen glowed like a beacon in the dark house as I captured screenshots, saved PDFs, backed everything up to my own secure drive. Each file represented another thread in this tapestry of deception, another piece of proof that would let truth speak louder than tears or manipulated guilt. The countdown kept pulsing in the corner of my screen, numbers reflected in my eyes as I worked. 44 hours, 17 minutes, 33 seconds, 32, 31. Time was a currency now, and I couldn't afford to spend it on anger. The clock ticked past 12:30 a.m. as I labeled the last folder, each piece of evidence arranged like ammunition in my arsenal of facts. The countdown blinked, steady and merciless. 29 seconds. 28, 27. I watched the sunrise paint my kitchen wall orange while my phone rang. Luke picked up on the second ring, voice scratchy with sleep but alert. "I'm on my way," he said before I could explain. "Give me 20 minutes." That's the thing about true friends. They hear what you're not saying. Luke and I went back to college days when we'd pull all-nighters studying for accounting finals. He knew my habits, my methods. If I was calling at dawn, this wasn't a casual chat. He arrived with 2 coffees and that steady presence that always made chaos feel manageable. The familiar scent of dark roast triggered a flash of nostalgia. Late nights in the library, spreadsheets spread across tables, Luke explaining depreciation schedules while I wrestled with formulas. "Show me what we're dealing with," he said, settling next to me at the kitchen table. I opened Truth and started walking him through the tabs. Luke didn't interrupt, just nodded and began sorting papers into piles. "Red for suspicious charges," he muttered, uncapping a marker. "Yellow for transfers, blue for cash advances." His methodical approach helped slow my racing thoughts. We worked in companionable silence, the only sounds the shuffle of paper and soft clicks of highlighters. A pattern emerged under the colors. Hotel charges in areas she claimed were work trips, large transfers to accounts I'd never seen, cash advances that lined up with days she said she was shopping for house projects. "You've got it documented clean," Luke said finally, capping his last marker. "Time to take this to the bank." The branch office was just opening when we arrived. Lucia Delgado, the fraud officer, looked exactly like someone you'd trust with financial secrets. Crisp blazer, attentive posture, eyes that missed nothing. She studied each tab of my binder while I explained the situation, her expression growing more focused with each page turn. "This is textbook coercive finance," she said, lingering over the credit card statements. "The pattern is clear, building debt in your name while limiting your awareness. And this HELOC application," she tapped the pending line of credit notice. "Classic red flag." My shoulders relaxed slightly at her validation. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't overreacting. "I can flag the HELOC as potentially fraudulent," she continued. "But there's a problem. Without a court order, we cannot stop a scheduled disbursement once it's in motion." She looked directly at me. "You need to file before Friday noon. That's when the system processes these transactions." The weight of the deadline settled heavy in my chest. Less than 48 hours to get in front of a judge. "Document everything," she advised, sliding my binder back across her desk. "You've made an excellent start, but now you need to escalate this legally." Luke and I walked out together, the automatic doors hissing behind us. The morning sun felt too bright, too exposed. But Delgado's words had cleared my path like headlights cutting through fog. The next step was obvious. Get to court before that countdown hit 0. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the mediation room, casting everyone in that sickly institutional pallor. I'd spent my lunch hour organizing Truth, making sure every tab told its story clearly. Now I sat across from Sandra, watching her shoulders hunch forward in practiced vulnerability. The mediator, Aaron Walsh, had the kind of calm efficiency you'd expect from someone who navigates other people's storms for a living. She laid out ground rules, then nodded to Sandra to begin. "I've been so lonely," Sandra's voice quavered. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue I knew she'd had ready in her sleeve. "We grew apart, Hector. You were always working, always with your spreadsheets and accounts." The irony of that particular complaint wasn't lost on me. I remembered countless evenings at home while she was networking or team building, all those nights that now mapped perfectly to hotel charges in the red highlighted stack. "I know I've hurt you," she continued, leaning forward. "But Mark was just a misunderstanding. A moment of weakness when I needed someone to talk to." She turned to Ms. Walsh. "We could try couples therapy. I want to work through this." My father used to say, "Numbers don't lie, even when people do." I'd watched him track every penny in his leather-bound ledger, teaching me that truth lives in the details. That memory steadied me as I reached for the top spreadsheet in my binder. "I appreciate you sharing that perspective," I said, keeping my voice neutral as I slid the document across the table. "But I'd like to discuss these e-signatures on the HELOC application." Sandra's fingers twitched against her tissue. I pointed to the highlighted rows where my digital signature appeared on dates I could prove I was elsewhere. "You can't spend what you didn't earn," I said quietly. Her face flickered, just for a moment, but I caught it. Her eyes locked onto the timestamp I'd printed in bold at the bottom of the page. Friday, 12 p.m., the scheduled disbursement time. I watched understanding flash across her features before she could hide it. That's when everything crystallized. This wasn't some emotional spiral or impulsive decision-making. Every move had been calculated, from the timing of her departure to the careful performance of remorse. This was choreography, not chaos. Ms. Walsh cleared her throat in the stretching silence. Perhaps we should take a brief recess to review these documents? I checked my watch. 48 hours until that timestamp became reality. Each second felt like sand slipping through an hourglass. Without a word, I began gathering the pages of truth, sliding them back into their labeled sections with the same precision I'd used to assemble them. Sandra watched my hands move, her own still clutching that unused tissue. The fluorescent lights buzzed above us like a countdown clock. I stood, tucking truth under my arm. My pulse remained steady as I pushed in my chair, each action measured and deliberate. The truth wasn't just in my binder anymore, it was written all over her face. The hallway air felt cooler as I stepped out, my shoes clicking against the tile. The plan for my next move was already hardening in my mind, as solid as the evidence in my hands. Back home, the house settled into its nighttime creaks and whispers. I sat at my desk, the only light coming from my laptop screen as I navigated back into the cloud storage. The familiar scent of coffee from my father's old percolator drifted up from the kitchen. Some habits of his I'd never shake, especially during long nights like this. My eyes burned from hours of staring at documents, but I couldn't stop now. Each folder held another piece of the puzzle, and I knew I hadn't hit bottom yet. The timestamp for Friday's disbursement blinked at me from the corner of my screen, a digital metronome counting down to 0 hour. That's when I found it. The file was buried 3 folders deep, labeled innocuously as HP Property Draft. My cursor hovered over it for a moment before I clicked. The PDF loaded, and my stomach dropped. A quitclaim deed. My name was there, typed neatly in the grantor field. The property description matched our house exactly, the home I'd bought before we married, the one with my grandmother's roses still blooming along the fence. Only now, the document was structured to transfer my ownership away, clean and complete. I remembered the day we planted those roses, Sandra holding the gardening spade while I mixed the soil. "These will last forever," she'd said then. The memory tasted bitter now, but the deed was just the beginning. The message thread between Sandra and Mark sprawled beneath it, laid out in neat gray bubbles like a roadmap of betrayal. Mark, once the HELOC clears, we move the money fast. Sandra, he won't notice until it's done. Too busy with his precious spreadsheets. Mark, perfect. He can hold the bag while we're gone. My hands didn't shake as I hit print. The printer hummed to life in the corner, spitting out page after page of their choreographed destruction. I reached for a fresh pack of red tabs, somehow fitting for the blood they'd planned to draw. Choreography, I wrote on a new divider, each letter precise and controlled. The pages slipped into place behind it, one by one, like evidence at a crime scene. Because that's what this was, not just a marriage ending, but a calculated financial ambush. The personal betrayal stung, sure, but watching them plot to strip away my home, to leave me drowning in debt while they vanished with the cash, that was different. That was cold. Professional. I picked up my phone, checking the time. Late, but not too late for Miguel Ortiz. He answered on the second ring. "I've got proof of conspiracy," I said without preamble. "Draft quitclaim deed and messages planning to drain the HELOC." "Send it now," Miguel replied, his voice sharp with focus. "I'll start the emergency filing. Meet me at dawn, 7 a.m. sharp." After we hung up, I turned back to the screen. The countdown ticker kept crawling toward Friday, each second clicking away with mechanical precision. The printer still hummed, documenting every step of their plan in crisp black and white. I reached for my coffee, now cold, and took a sip anyway. The bitter taste matched my mood, but my mind stayed clear. They'd planned their choreography down to the minute. Now it was my turn to change the steps. Dawn painted Miguel's office windows in watercolor grays as I spread truth across his desk. The space smelled of leather and fresh coffee, reminding me of weekend mornings at my father's accounting firm. Some part of me wished he was here now. Dad always knew how to make sense of numbers gone wrong. Miguel moved through the binder with practiced efficiency, his tie loosened just enough to suggest he'd been here for hours already. His fingers traced each tab, pausing at the red sections. "These signatures," he said, tapping a HELOC application. "They're demonstrably forged. Look at how the H differs from your verified signatures." He pulled out a legal pad, making swift notes in precise handwriting. "And this credit card, opened without your knowledge or consent? Found it yesterday. Never saw the application, never activated it, never used it." He nodded, his expression hardening as he reached the choreography section. The messages between Sandra and Mark scrolled past as he flipped pages, his eyebrows lifting slightly at their casual discussion of financial sabotage. "The quitclaim deed draft is particularly damning," Miguel said, pulling that page free and adding it to a growing stack of priority exhibits. Combined with these messages about the HELOC disbursement, it shows clear intent to defraud. I watched him work, my coffee cooling untouched beside me. Through the window, the city was waking up, traffic beginning to pulse through the streets below. Somewhere out there, a clock was ticking toward Friday noon. "We're filing for an emergency temporary restraining order," Miguel explained, his hands moving between documents with mechanical precision. "The court needs to see immediate and irreparable harm would result without intervention." He looked up at me. "Which is exactly what we have here." The next hour blurred into a stream of papers, sticky tabs, and careful initials. Miguel's assistant brought in affidavits, each one requiring my signature and a notary stamp. I signed my name so many times it started to look foreign to me. "Each exhibit needs your initials," Miguel directed, sliding another stack toward me. "These will back up the verified complaint." His tone was steady, grounding. This wasn't just paperwork. It was armor being forged, plate by plate. The wall clock ticked past 8 as Miguel gathered the finished documents. Everything had been copied in triplicate, each set bound with heavy clips that felt reassuringly solid in my hands. "The duty judge can hear us at 10, he said, straightening his tie. "We'll want to be early." He picked up his briefcase, nodding toward the door. "Ready?" I gathered truth, its weight familiar now against my side. We stepped into the corridor, our shoes clicking against polished floors. The courthouse smell hit me as soon as we pushed through the heavy doors, paper, polish, and something older, like history settling into the walls. Miguel moved with purpose, guiding us toward the clerk's office. I kept pace, my grip tight on the binder that held every scrap of evidence I'd gathered. The next few hours would determine everything, whether I'd keep my home or watch it dissolve into someone else's scheme. The morning light slanted through tall windows, catching dust motes in golden beams. My father's voice echoed in my memory. "Numbers don't lie, son. They just need someone patient enough to read them right." I held on to that thought as we approached the clerk's window, truth steady in my hands. The courtroom's oak panels absorbed our footsteps as Miguel and I took our places at the plaintiff's table. My hand rested on Truth's cover, feeling the slight ridge where the sticky note had marked Friday's deadline. The gallery behind us sat empty, just us, the court reporter, and the clerk arranging files on the bench. Judge Manson entered with purposeful strides, his robes settling as he took his seat. His presence filled the space with the kind of authority that comes from years of seeing through pretense to find fact. "Good morning," he said, his voice carrying that particular mix of courtesy and command that skilled judges master. "I understand we have an emergency motion regarding a home equity line of credit?" Miguel rose, adjusting his tie with a small gesture that spoke of countless mornings just like this. "Yes, Your Honor. We're seeking immediate injunctive relief to prevent imminent and irreparable harm to my client's property interests." I watched as Miguel methodically laid out our case, his hands moving with precision as he approached the bench with copies of Truth. The judge's expression remained neutral, but his eyes sharpened as Miguel highlighted the forged signatures on the HELOC application. "If I may direct Your Honor's attention to Exhibit C," Miguel continued, "you'll see the unauthorized credit card opened in my client's name without his knowledge or consent." He turned pages with practiced efficiency. And particularly concerning, Exhibit E shows draft documentation of a quitclaim deed, accompanied by electronic messages discussing plans to drain the HELOC funds before abandoning the property. Judge Manson leaned forward slightly, studying the messages where Sandra and her ex had mapped out their scheme. His pen moved across his notepad in quick, decisive strokes. "The timing is critical, Your Honor," Miguel emphasized. "The HELOC disbursement is scheduled for noon tomorrow. Without the court's intervention, Mr. Parker faces immediate loss of equity he's built over years of faithful mortgage payments." The judge looked up from the evidence, his gaze moving between the documents and me. "Mr. Parker, these are serious allegations. Have you verified all these exhibits personally?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Every document in that binder was either discovered directly by me or verified through official channels. I've included source documentation for each exhibit." Judge Manson nodded once, then spent several minutes reviewing the evidence in silence. The only sound was the soft whisper of pages turning and the muted tick of the courtroom clock. Finally, he set down his pen. "The evidence presented is clear and compelling. This court finds immediate action necessary to prevent irreparable harm. He looked directly at me. The HELOC is hereby frozen. Any debt from the unauthorized credit card is assigned solely to Sandra Parker. Mr. Parker is granted exclusive use and possession of the marital home, and restitution will be set at a subsequent hearing. Relief flooded through me, loosening muscles I hadn't realized were tight. Miguel squeezed my shoulder briefly as we gathered our materials, but the day wasn't finished testing me. As we stepped into the marble hallway, I heard her voice. "Hector, wait!" Sandra stood near the water fountain, her eyes red-rimmed and her hands twisting together. Gone was the careful performance from mediation. This was raw, desperate. "I made a mistake," she whispered, her voice catching. "I want to come home." She took a step closer, reaching toward me. "I still love you." The words hung in the air between us, somewhere between the polished marble floors and the weight of the court orders in my briefcase. I stood there in the courthouse hallway, feeling the weight of our shared history press against my chest. 8 years of Sunday brunches, Christmas mornings opening presents in our matching pajamas, the way she'd curl up with her coffee by the bay window. For a moment, those memories felt as solid as the marble beneath my feet. But then I remembered the binder in my briefcase. Truth. Each tab marking a calculated betrayal, the forged signatures, the secret credit card, the messages plotting to strip away my home. The quitclaim deed drafted in silence while she smiled across our dinner table. Every page documented not just deception, but careful choreography. "Sandra," I said, keeping my voice gentle but firm. The echo of her name against the courthouse walls felt different now. "What you're feeling isn't love. It's consequence." She stepped closer, makeup slightly smudged beneath her eyes. "No, you don't understand. The ex was a mistake. Everything was a mistake. We can start over." "The mistake wasn't being with him," I interrupted softly. "The mistake was thinking you could orchestrate my financial ruin and still have me as a backup plan." I adjusted my grip on the briefcase, feeling the edges of truth press against my palm. "Love doesn't forge signatures or draft secret property transfers." I was scared, she whispered, confused. "But seeing you here, how you handled everything." Her voice trailed off as fresh tears welled up. I thought of my father, the bookkeeper who taught me numbers tell truths people won't. He would have recognized this moment, when clarity cuts through emotion like sunlight through fog. "The door is closed, Sandra. Not because I'm angry, but because trust, once weaponized, can't be restored." I took a measured breath. "I wish you well, but our story ends here." Miguel's subtle presence at my shoulder reminded me it was time to go. I turned away from her muffled sob, each step down the courthouse stairs feeling more certain than the last. The evening air carried the scent of early autumn as I stopped at Marshall's Hardware. The small brass deadbolt felt solid in my palm, simple, honest mechanics of tumblers and keys. No hidden agendas, no secret plans. Back home, I knelt at my front door with a screwdriver and the installation guide. Each turn of the screws felt like writing the final lines of our story. The metal caught the porch light as I tested the mechanism. Slide, click, secure. Standing in my entryway, I inhaled the quiet. The house didn't feel too big anymore. It felt like mine, protected not just by court orders and frozen accounts, but by the simple brass sentinel I just installed. I'd won twice today, saved my home and assets through calm persistence, and freed myself from a love that had become a weapon. The key turned smoothly in the new lock, each tumbler falling into place with satisfying precision. As the deadbolt slid home, I remembered what my father used to say about balance sheets. They're not about money, they're about truth. Today, everything balanced perfectly. Some might mistake my measured response for weakness, but I knew better now. Calm isn't weakness, it's how justice finds you.